This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Efforts to contain COVID-19 intensify as confirmed cases surpass 3.1 million globally. How immunization campaigns for infectious diseases may be affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in our continuing COVID-19 series, we'll look at what countries in Africa are doing to increase access to digital learning platforms. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. In business, a shot in the arm for Nigeria as the IMF approves a $3.4 billion loan. And how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting music recording and performances in South Africa. We start the program with a look at COVID-19 figures worldwide. Confirmed cases have now surpassed 3.1 million, killing more than 217,000 people. The number of cases in the United States has topped 1 million, about a third of the global total. More than 58,000 people have died there. Nearly half of the world's cases are in Europe. Spain has over 230,000 cases. It reported over 300 new deaths on Tuesday, bringing the total to over 23,000. In Italy, the virus has killed more than 27,000 people, the second highest death toll behind the United States. The United Kingdom reported nearly 4,000 new cases, bringing the total there to over 160,000. Turkey has seen infections top 114,000. The Chinese mainland has confirmed 22 new cases. 21 of these are people who returned home from abroad. Well, meanwhile, the Chinese capital of Beijing will lower its coronavirus emergency response from level 1 to level 2 starting on Thursday. China has a 4-tier response system for health emergencies, with level 1 being the most serious. People going to the capital from low-risk areas of China will no longer be required to undergo quarantine at home, but quarantine measures for international arrivals will remain in place. Beijing will also partially loosen restrictions for people entering residential areas. Delivery services and people visiting friends and relatives will be allowed to enter residential areas if they can show a green health code on their cell phone. China has announced this year's National People's Congress is set to open in just a few weeks. The 2 sessions is when the country's top lawmakers and political advisors convene in Beijing. These key political meetings are usually held earlier in the year, but were postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. Our reporter Chu Huhao has more from the capital.
All eyes were on the announcement of the date of the country's largest political gathering this year. Now, the announcement finally came this morning. The third annual session of the 13th National People's Congress, or NPC, will be held on May 22nd. Now, the event was originally scheduled to take place on March 5th, but it was postponed due to the COVID-19 epidemic. Now, the delay allowed government officials to concentrate on controlling the outbreak, which has killed more than 4,600 people in China. Now that the outbreak has been brought under control, you've seen work resumption has reached nearly 100% and life is getting back to normal. China's top legislature decided it's time to open this year's NPC session. However, they didn't announce how long the annual session will be. So normally the event lasts for 10 days. Now, meanwhile, the other important meeting of the 2 sessions is the annual session of the National Committee of CPPCC, Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. This one was proposed to start on May 21st, just a day before the NPC.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has been discussing the country's coronavirus measures with health officials. Egypt is among the worst hit African nations. Authorities reported 260 new infections on Tuesday, taking the total past the 5,000 mark. Here's Adel El-Mahraoui with more.
President el-Sisi has followed up on the measures Egypt is taking to face the pandemic. On Tuesday, he spoke directly with those on the front lines. Beside his health advisor, health and higher education ministers, he held a video conference with 6 of the directors of the biggest quarantine hospitals in Egypt. El-Sisi assured that all medical supplies and manpower needed is available. He also gave directives to intensify awareness campaigns to encourage citizens to seek help immediately if they feel any symptoms. On the other hand, the hospital directors have given the president a status of their occupancy rates and intensive care units preparedness. None of them has reached their full capacity yet. Egypt has dedicated 30 hospitals to accommodate COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Higher Education says it has equipped 13 student dorms and is setting up 19 other buildings to be Egypt's second line of defense. That provides more than 18,600 additional rooms to the hospital capacities and can accommodate double that figure. Meanwhile, Egypt's infection rates is getting higher. The country has reached its first 1,000 cases in 50 days. It reached the last 1,000 in just 4 days, and the government is expecting higher increase in the rates in the coming weeks. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
To South Africa now, the Chinese consulate in Cape Town and the local Chinese community have donated medical supplies, food parcels, as well as cash to help vulnerable areas in the Western Cape. The donations also included face masks, sanitizers, and surgical masks. The move is seen as a symbol of solidarity between China and South Africa in the fight against COVID-19. The joint donation took place at the Consulate General of China in Cape Town. The ceremony was hosted by Chinese Consul General Lin Jing. The two-part donation was accepted by Albert Fritz, Minister for Community Safety in the Western Cape. The legal advisor of the Chinese Community Policing Forum in Cape Town, Dong Gang, was also in attendance. The donation is one of many raised by the Chinese community in South Africa.
At this difficult time, we need to stand closely with our South African friends to exhaust our efforts to help our South African friends to fight against the pandemic.
Remember, those policemen don't have face masks. So we've already procured it with that money that was given by the Chinese community in Cape Town. And so it's an important part that we need to continue that solidarity, that contributions to save this virus, but to save the front line. We're also giving masks to all our neighborhood watches, you know, the civil society policing forums, to assist them to help us with social distancing, with queue management at supermarkets and clinics, all of those kind of stuff. And so this donation is an amazing contribution to that.
We decided to stand together with local community, especially to support the SAPS members and also the law enforcement, because they are the people fighting in the front line. They must be well looked after and well protected. Therefore, they can enforce the regulations.
Let's turn to Somalia now, where infections continue to rise, with 528 confirmed cases and 28 deaths reported. Government agencies there have begun distributing protective gear as part of efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bello has more from Mogadishu.
Officials and security personnel are distributing reusable face masks to members of the public as part of government efforts to limit the spread of the coronavirus in the country. Samia Muhyiddin is one of several health workers leading the exercise. She takes time to explain to people in the capital, Mogadishu, why wearing a face mask is crucial to stopping the spread of the virus.
The masks we are distributing today are locally made, reusable, can be washed with hot water and reused time and time again. Our awareness campaign is simple. First, protect yourself and then protect others.
Those targeted by the initiative include public transport operators, rickshaw drivers and anyone seen on the streets without a face mask.
As a rickshaw driver, I meet with different people all the time. Some might have the virus and others might not have it. As a precaution, it's best to have the face mask with you all the time, as per health directives from the Ministry of Health.
Several measures have been put in place, including a ban on intercity travel, flights and suspension of learning in schools. However, implementing social distancing remains the biggest challenge so far. Police have since been deployed as part of measures to boost awareness.
Increasing awareness among the public is an important thing. We are on the streets today to warn our people on the dangers of the coronavirus. We are distributing the masks to all members of the public.
In a virtual meeting with the country's COVID-19 task force, President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo acknowledged his country's inability to tackle the pandemic. The Somali leader is instead advocating for prevention as the first line of defense before an outbreak overwhelms Somalia's weak health system.
We never expected to confront this disease because of many factors, one of which is our weak health system, economy and insecurity. We all need each other in this fight. Let us show unity in the face of this pandemic.
Somalia has the second highest number of infections in the region after Djibouti, that has passed the 1,000 mark. It also has the highest death toll in the region, with concerns that the virus will claim more lives in the coming weeks unless locals comply with health directives. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Many Muslims in Nigeria have been fasting during the holy month of Ramadan, but this time around they are doing so amid a coronavirus lockdown and a ban on mass gatherings. As CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports from Abuja, this has posed some challenges to traditional practices.
Imam Abdul Qadir Hassan makes his call for prayers in the early hours, but only a limited number of people converge. The holy month here is usually marked with mass congregational prayers and the communal fellowship of Muslims who gather before and after sunset. But it's different this year.
It has been part of, the activities of Ramadan when Muslims want to break their fast. Coronavirus affected, this year's fasting. Number one, we are not, of course, we won't come in congregation, to pray. That is one. And number two, even during the iftar, the sunset, when the sun has already set, we usually break our fast. Mostly we usually come together, because there is blessing in sharing, there is blessing, in eating, together. Of course, it affected it in that way because there is no way, we will come.
The pandemic has also made it increasingly difficult for many minimum and low-income earners to fend for their families. With major offices and businesses closed, the government has been trying to ease the suffering of the people through support programs. But many people say they're yet to receive any aid.
With COVID-19 on the ground, there's no preparation for this year's Ramadan. We're not allowed to go to the market to buy food, and we don't have money either to purchase it. So it's going to be very difficult.
There's no money to go enter market or buy food. We've been hearing of what they used to say palliative and what have you. Up to this moment that I speak to you, there are a lot of people who are complaining that they are yet to receive this palliative. So definitely it will affect people at home.
Once the month of Ramadan ends and the moon is sighted, Muslims celebrate the Eid al-Fitr. This holiday is marked with a feast, and the better off share what they have with the poor in their communities. But this too could be affected by the coronavirus pandemic and the need for social distancing, making this year's Ramadan one of the most challenging for Muslims in Nigeria and across the world. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
In Senegal, over 800 cases of the coronavirus have been reported. 9 people have also died from the disease, prompting the government to impose strict measures to curb the spread. This has affected vulnerable groups such as street children who are struggling to find shelter, assistance and food. CGTN's Chamgona reports.
Around 40,000 street children in Senegal are at risk since government declared a state of emergency over the COVID-19 epidemic in late March. The minors suffer from poor sanitation and drug usage, exposing them further to the disease. Social services are now increasing their capacity to accommodate them.
They live in precarious hygiene conditions, which increases the risk of contamination. They are not well informed about the health impacts, so they are at a high risk, and it is urgent to shelter them.
Since the start of the pandemic, the police have been mistreating us. They were slapping us. Then people from the village pilot told us it could be harder in the near future because there could be a complete confinement order and that no one would be able to go out day or night. So because of that, I decided to come here.
The homeless children are known as talibs, youth from Quranic schools who are forced to beg for money. Others come from broken families or have lost their homes because of poverty.
We go out to look for them almost every day. We have stopped doing these rounds at the normal times because of the current situation, whereby the government put in place measures due to the state of emergency, such as a curfew and a ban on public gatherings.
Some of the children staying at the centers left to return to Dakar, but were faced with a new reality.
They went back, but now they want to come back here again because they regret leaving. It's hard in Dakar. All the restaurants are closed. There's nothing left to eat. We also used to distribute food, but we stopped.
Life has always been difficult for the children, and with the expanding outbreak, they are now more vulnerable than ever. Chamrono, CGTN.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. How immunization campaigns for infectious diseases may be affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in our continuing COVID-19 series, we'll look at what countries in Africa are doing to increase access to digital learning platforms.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Uganda plans to immunize close to 1 million children against polio over the next 6 months. A recent World Health Organization global report showed some 117 million children were at risk of missing out on their vaccines as attention turns to fighting COVID-19. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga reports.
A campaign against polio. These health workers are making sure every child in Uganda is immunized.
We are ensuring that the population is fully aware that COVID is here and will go, but there are also other health risks that are posed by the already available diseases, among which are immunizable diseases.
Health providers say growing demand for frontline health workers to attend to COVID-19 has delayed immunization services. They worry that diseases they have managed to bring under control could resurface. Uganda has not recorded a case of polio for the last 10 years, but now it's on high alert because neighboring countries like DRC and Somalia are still grappling with active polio cases. Measles and rubella continue to pose a challenge to health workers. Figures from Uganda's health ministry show that the country recorded 300,000 cases of measles in the last 3 years. The highly infectious disease attacks mostly children below the age of 5. Apart from polio and measles, health workers are also treating other diseases that vaccines can prevent.
We are looking into how to deal with Ebola, which is also another threat we are looking at. The weather is changing and we are coming into a season where cholera is a threat. So we have to look into all other essential services in health and in other sectors to ensure that the population, while we are protecting it from COVID, does not die from pregnancy or from other diseases which are vaccine preventable.
According to the World Health Organization, 500,000 children in Africa die every year from vaccine-preventable diseases. The health organization says 37 countries are at risk of not distributing the measles vaccine during the coronavirus pandemic. But here in Uganda, the country's health providers are working to ensure that these children receive their routine immunizations to keep the disease at bay. Hilary Yesiga, CGTN, Kampala.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Children's Fund says nearly 800,000 children will miss out on their second dose of their measles vaccination. The country's vaccination campaign has been postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. South Sudan launched the campaign in February after outbreaks of measles were reported in parts of the country. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
The vaccination campaign aimed to reach 2.5 million children across South Sudan, but UNICEF says that figure had dropped by 787,000 children. The exercise has been postponed indefinitely because of the anti-COVID-19 restrictions, but was already facing challenges.
Traditionally, if we see in the last couple of the years, almost 50% of the children, they miss their routine vaccinations. Because of the context-specific challenges related to availability of the skilled human resources, excess due to the security and other natural disasters like flood last year.
South Sudan's health ministry says the vaccination drive will resume as soon as measures put in place to prevent the spread of the coronavirus are lifted.
I would like to appeal to the people of South Sudan that we are okay, we are going to be okay, and we have to fight together this COVID-19. Stay where you are, and you have to accept the rule we have given already.
South Sudan's government says it is distributing vaccines to hospitals across the country so that children who go there during this period can receive it.
However, South Sudanese people have limited access to healthcare services. There are only 15 hospitals for a population of 11 million people. Vaccination campaigns have previously been successful because teams of medical personnel are sent to every village. That is not possible while South Sudan is partially locked down because of the coronavirus. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Well, measures taken by African governments to control the spread of COVID-19 have had far-reaching socio-economic effects. CGTN is airing a special series of stories on how the outbreak has affected different segments of society, and today we're focusing on the education sector. As a result of disruptions to the school calendar due to the coronavirus pandemic, a number of schools in Zimbabwe have set up online resources, but rural and low-income pupils who don't have internet or mobile phone access have been locked out of learning. CGTN's Farai Makutoya reports.
Tembelani Manenga Isa is due to write her O-level exams in November. As she prepares, she's revising what was taught in class before schools were closed 2 weeks earlier than planned. Unlike some of her classmates, she doesn't have the most recent notes, which have been sent via smartphone.
I don't have a phone, neither does my mother. She can't afford one.
As the eldest of 4 children, she's responsible for cooking, cleaning, and babysitting, amongst other chores, all of which limit the time she has to study. Her failure to participate in e-learning is a further handicap.
It's been a month since we stopped going to school, so e-learning is the best way to catch up. But it doesn't work for me. It's painful knowing that others are learning as we speak, but I can't. My mother encourages me to study using the books I have and to get notes from students who sat their exams last year and those who have the ones sent on their phones. But it's not everyone who's willing to share.
The Ministry of Education is promoting e-learning and is aware that there are communities that may not have access to it. And so it's working with partners to deliver lessons on alternative platforms such as radio to make sure that no student is left behind. But those whose children are already trailing want more immediate action.
I hope the government can find a secure quarantine location where exam candidates can resume their lessons. The government can also extend the school calendar so that the candidates may have more time to prepare.
Schools are due to reopen on May the 5th for the second term, a date that's now increasingly in doubt. So a longer and academically frustrating time out is in store for students who can't access lessons outside the classroom. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, South Africa's secondary school students are still preparing for final exams despite the ongoing coronavirus lockdown. The focus has shifted from physical classrooms to digital learning, but many learners do not have access to the internet, and it's prompting educators to find other ways of sharing lessons. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Tamanaika lives in an informal settlement in KwaZulu-Natal, one of the poorest provinces in South Africa. She needs to pass her matriculation exam to graduate secondary school. It's anxious times for her and other grade 12 learners who aren't at school during the extended lockdown.
It's very difficult as we are studying alone without any teachers to help us. But our teachers has gone the extra mile to help us through WhatsApp by sending work for term 2. And it has given us opportunities to recap what we didn't really focus on in our term 1 work.
Naika's teacher Sunaina Partab has been hard at work preparing daily lessons.
I download the content, I screenshot it, and I send it to my economics learners. With accounting, it's a bit tough because it's a subject where you need to be in front of the learner and teach them every single transaction.
But most parents here rely on social grants and menial jobs, making the task harder.
Right now, getting basic food essentials is a problem, let alone getting access to technology. So what I have done is I have made an appeal to my family members who have come on board to get them access to at least food hampers, because the learners, if they do not have access to basic things like food, the learners can't concentrate.
Lessons are being made available online and through radio and TV. Last year's matriculants who remember the pressure of their final exam are also helping.
We started off using WhatsApp for students that didn't have online access to something like Zoom or Skype. More recently, we've expanded to use Zoom. We do Zoom conferences with 10 students where we go through a topic. We answer questions that they may have. We go through past papers. We've now moved to YouTube where we record a lesson using our notes from last year and our study notes.
South Africa's matric exams are expected to still go ahead. Grade 12 learners might have to go back to school before restrictions are lifted. The Education Department is also considering scrapping holidays for the rest of the year once schooling resumes, so that not all is lost. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, meanwhile, here in Kenya, the government has also introduced digital classes to help students catch up with their lessons while schools remain closed. But similarly, not all students have access to these classes. Some teachers, though, have gone out of their way to ensure no one is left behind by using phone apps and smartphones. CGTN's Robert Nagila has that story.
In the low-income neighborhood of Umoja, east of Nairobi, Boss Isigi provides online classes to students from poor backgrounds from this bedsitter.
As a teacher, even if you teach under a tree, in classroom, online, as long as you are using the approved material, you are relevant.
In March, the government shut down all schools in a bid to curb the spread of COVID-19. To bridge the gap created by the closure, the Ministry of Education introduced digital classes on radio and TV.
Good afternoon, teacher. My name is Gianna and I'm ready to learn.
Using a smartphone and a laptop, Isigi provides online learning for those without access to a TV, using the app WhatsApp for interactive sessions.
When the schools closed is when I got a larger enrollment than before. I chose WhatsApp because I saw a majority of Kenyans use WhatsApp.
Good afternoon, Teacher Atlanta.
Please make sure that you have a book, a pencil, a rubber, and crayons.
Currently, about 160 students from poor neighborhoods have enrolled for his online classes, paying $3 a month. 14 teachers are on hand to guide them. About 5 kilometers away, Nancy Ochieng is taking a 3-year-old daughter, Audrey, through what she's learned in her online class. She says the classes have helped Audrey keep up with her classmates.
She had just finished playgroup, and I thought if she continues with the activities they were doing in school, she won't forget. So the classes help and the teachers guide me on what to do.
The parent has the role of monitorship because some of the children cannot actually type because the younger age, like PP1, PP2, parents will have to play a role. Some of them do not know how to record their voices back and give the feedback of what the teacher have asked.
It is still not clear whether schools will reopen for the second term, which is supposed to begin in May. That will largely depend on whether the government feels it has the upper hand in the fight against COVID-19. Until then, educators like Isigi are playing a vital role, ensuring there is minimum disruption amongst disadvantaged communities when it comes to learning. Robert Nagela, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
In Uganda, the coronavirus lockdown is causing anxiety among educators who generally don't earn a high salary to begin with. The prolonged closure of schools means some teachers from private institutions may not be earning a salary at all. Isabel Nakiria reports.
Walking into an empty school felt too quiet to James Chiberu. The lockdown period has been the longest he's stayed away. And he says he misses his students most.
It feels different, and nobody would wish for it. Because when the kids are here, we are earning. And it's part of, our life now that we work with kids. So it kind of entertains, brightens your day.
The second term of school in Uganda was cut short after the government directed everyone to stay at home. Wednesday is one of Chiberu's most busy days at school. He would have 8 classes to teach on a day like this, but today he completely feels hopeless that he has no work to do at school. Mr. Chiberu is now left with an empty classroom as pupils stay at home. He's had to adapt to online teaching, which can be challenging for some children.
We upload work weekly. We keep changing it, and kids are benefiting. Well, there are also those that are learning from TVs. I think it's a good idea because the difference would be in class, there is one-on-one interaction, so everybody is catered for.
The delay and uncertainty over the start of the school semester is worsening the anxiety. Mr. Chiberu is lucky that his school can still afford to pay him, even when he isn't working. But if the lockdown goes on a long time, the situation could change. Other teachers are not sure whether they will get paid if the lockdown goes on much longer.
Majority of us, like we teachers, we are being sent back home. And if you're teaching in a private school, you may not know whether you are going to get your salary for 1 month. But because the condition with the private, work and you're paid. If you don't work, then you are not paid.
The Ugandan government has now extended the lockdown period until early May to be able to contain the disease. And teachers like Mr. Chiberu worry whether they will continue earning a salary without work. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
Your business news coming up next. A shot in the arm for Nigeria as the IMF approves a $3.4 billion loan. And data and financial services drive Kenya's Safaricom revenues up by 13%.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The International Monetary Fund has approved Nigeria's request for emergency financial assistance. The IMF board has granted the West African country $3.4 billion under its rapid financing instrument. The IMF financial support will help limit the decline in international reserves and provide financing to the budget for targeted spending increases. The spending is aimed at containing and mitigating the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Even before the outbreak, Nigeria's economy was facing headwinds from rising external influences and falling per capita GDP levels. The coronavirus pandemic, along with the sharp fall in oil prices, has magnified economic challenges, leading to an historic decline in growth and large financing needs. Well, Egypt has also turned to the IMF for loans to help it deal with the coronavirus pandemic. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli says the financing will help protect progress made through the country's economic reform program. CGTN's Adel Al-Mahri reports from Cairo.
Not long ago, Egypt said it would opt for other sources of debt than the IMF. But the COVID-19 has forced the government to reconsider that stand.
We wanted to look at the future for at least 1 year and put some precautionary measures in place. What if this crisis extends longer? We've seen sectors like tourism and aviation are almost completely frozen, and how this will impact the Egyptian economy. That's why we developed negotiations with the IMF to include a financial aspect to the current technical support program.
Egypt was already negotiating with the IMF for an administrative reform program to build on its 2016 economic reform plan. The new funding will include a 1-year rapid relief instrument and a separate standby arrangement. Experts estimate the loan to range from $3 to $4 billion.
The IMF is extremely excited because of the huge confidence in the Egyptian economy and the Egyptian government as well because of our reform program.
A new IMF loan will burden the government, which already has a record high foreign debt of more than $109 billion. But analysts say the pandemic left Egypt with no other choice.
We are not a producing nation, we are a consuming nation. We've always made up for that from the revenues of the Suez Canal. Exporting natural gas or tourism, all are in crisis. Therefore, to preserve our foreign currency reserve, we had to resort to a new loan because rescheduling current ones would decrease our rating.
The International Monetary Fund is expected to review Egypt's request in the next few weeks. IMF says the rapid financing instrument is expected to fill immediate needs in the balance of payments. It should also support the most vulnerable segments of society and the worst affected industries. Egypt will be seeking a 5-year low-interest repayment plan. Adel Al-Mahri, CGTN, Cairo.
Kenya's leading telecoms firm Safaricom released its full-year financial results this morning for the period ending 31 March 2020. A key highlight has been the growth in revenue and growth in the M-Pesa brand in 2019. Service revenue grew 4.8% to $2.3 billion from $2.2 billion recorded last year. This was despite the firm offering free person-to-person transfers on M-Pesa in the wake of COVID-19 and banning of betting firms in Kenya last year. Earnings before interest and taxes rose 13.5% to $943 million from $831 million reported in 2019, while headline earnings per share grew 14.3%. Safaricom reported an 11.4% year-on-year growth in profit after tax to $687 million, up from $583 million recorded last year. The results were streamed online in accordance with COVID-19 restrictions on physical distancing. Now, according to the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center, the United States has now more than 1 million identified cases of COVID-19. The country passed the grim milestone as U.S. President Donald Trump pledged to support small businesses suffering from the virus lockdowns. CGTN's Giles Gibson reports from Washington.
U.S. President Donald Trump invited small business owners to the White House on Tuesday, vowing to reopen the U.S. economy.
Now that our experts believe the worst days of the pandemic are behind us, Americans are looking forward to the safe and rapid reopening of our country. Throughout this ordeal, millions of hardworking Americans have been asked to really make tremendous sacrifices.
The Trump administration has been criticized for giving loans to larger companies in the first round of an emergency small business loan program. Last week, the U.S. Congress approved a second round of funding, but the program's website crashed on Monday as business owners rushed to apply. On Tuesday, President Trump also met Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis at the White House, but there was no coronavirus task force briefing. The president is reportedly under pressure to hold fewer briefings like this after clashing with the press throughout April.
Hey, Phil, I'm the president and you're fake news.
His opponent in November's U.S. election, former Vice President Joe Biden, is also staying off the campaign trail during the pandemic. He did get an endorsement from Hillary Clinton, though, during a digital campaign event.
Just think of what a difference it would make right now if we had a president who not only listened to the science, put facts over fiction, but brought us together.
New polling out this week gave Biden a 6-point lead nationally over President Trump just 6 months before Election Day. Giles Gibson, CGTN, Washington.
And to the oil sector now. U.S. oil prices rebounded above $14 a barrel in Asian morning trade. And that came a day after a sell-off sparked by a major fund dumping its holdings of the commodity. Meanwhile, British energy giant BP on Tuesday said it recorded $4.4 billion in net losses in the first quarter as the global oil sector was hit by unprecedented supply and demand shocks. BP also said that first quarter output dropped 3% to less than 4 million barrels per day. In addition, BP said it plans to reduce cash costs by billions of dollars and confirmed there would be job cuts towards the end of this year. Tunisia's Transport Ministry says a new shipping line linking the country's port of Sfax to that of Tripoli in Libya is now operational. The shipping link is expected to boost trade between the two countries, as well as ease pressure on land transport. With more on this, here's CGTN's Adnan Chouachi.
Tunisia has been keen to increase its trade links with Libya. The Tunisian trade minister says the new maritime lane between the ports of Sfax and Tripoli will help achieve that and lower transport costs too.
The cargo ships from Tunisia to Libya are transporting goods as well as food products to provide Libyans with all they need. We are increasing cooperation between Libyan economic partners in this critical period. Land transport was costly, very long and difficult. This maritime alternative is a strategic choice.
The minister says Tunisian producers and Libyan consumers should take advantage of the new route, which will also serve humanitarian purposes.
The maritime line has started during the holy month of Ramadan. It's a period of solidarity between Tunisian and Libyan brothers. The ongoing international crisis has brought closer ties between the nations. There's an abundance of agricultural produce in Tunisia that Libyan people need, while local farmers can sell their products.
Following the success of the first 24-hour trip, a second cargo ship carrying 300 containers has left the port of Sfax to the port of Tripoli.
There will be 3 trips per month. The number could rise if more Tunisian exporters are interested in the Libyan market. The port of Sfax has received several requests from companies in many regions across Tunisia to export to the port of Tripoli.
The trade minister says departments in the ministry are willing to assist increased volume of trade with Libya through the port of Sfax after the end of the coronavirus crisis. According to the Tunisian Transport and Logistics Ministry, the volume of trade between Tunisia and Libya has increased since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. The aim of the new line is to ease the pressure on land transport and to secure the flow of goods between the 2 North African countries. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is not just sparking a global health crisis, it's also placing the world's labor market in a state of emergency, and Tanzania is no exception. As CGTN's Daniel Kijo now reports, without specific legislation protecting workers, the East African nation's private sector faces an uncertain future.
April has been a month of uncertainty for Johanna Kiula. He is a teacher at Prestige Schools, one of the hundreds of private schools located in Dar es Salaam. Since the government ordered the closure of schools 2 months ago, more than 120 students are now at home. Parents have not paid school fees for the children since learning had stopped at the institution. As a result, the school cannot afford to keep all 26 members of staff working. Johanna says this has caused extreme mental stress.
My way toward my goals was very clear, but now it is like shaken. I have bills to pay at my home, the rent, electricity, I should pay water.
Tanzania's labor laws are split between private and public sectors. Both offer options like retrenchment, termination, reduced salary, or unpaid leave as options during times of crisis, such as bankruptcy, financial uncertainties, or changes in technology. The management of Prestige Schools has opted to send its staff on unpaid leave. They hope that the situation will change in the near future.
We didn't say that we are giving you unpaid leave forever. It was not like that way. And we told them we are not firing anybody. We are still the same family. But what is happening is that the financial situation is not good.
After this month, the school management says it may look at a reduction in salaries for staff. Going forward, it hopes to pay its workers from revenue generated through online classes. But the school is not alone. Many businesses in the country are going through similar challenges. Both employees and employers in Tanzania are evaluating their rights. Workers want to know what protection they have under labor law, while employers are seeking guidance on how to keep a business going during the COVID-19 crisis. Legal expert Eric Ringo says Tanzania has no legislation that directly addresses employment contracts during pandemics like COVID-19. But he says that any changes to an employment contract must be agreed to by both parties.
If an employer wants to reduce the salary because of the pandemic, then that one must be agreed between the parties.
The pandemic is changing the face of labor in Tanzania as more people are forced to work from home. And just like in many other countries, Tanzania's labor market looks to change, forcing business owners and staff to adjust. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, we take a look at how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting music recording and performances in South Africa.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
One of South Africa's most popular bands, Mikasa, has been forced to halt the production of a milestone album celebrating a decade of their youthful and vibrant music. The country's entertainment industry has been badly hit after the government stopped public gatherings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Although South Africa is gradually easing some restrictions, it will take some time before artists can perform live concerts. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
It's a tough time for South African musicians. Unable to take to their stage, their livelihoods has been halted by the coronavirus lockdown. Mikasa, one of the country's most popular bands, has had to shelve the release of its 5th studio album.
That we've kind of spent all our reserves on making the album and promoting it. So it's shooting a music video, it's, doing the photo shoots, it's doing the styling, the makeup, blah. And you do this as an artist because you know that you're going to make your return off performances and touring the album around the country. And then in June was set to take off an African tour on the project, and in August be in Europe. This has all gone out the window.
Fans got a taste of what's to come when the first single, Church Bells, was released in March, days before the level 5 lockdown was enforced.
So Church Bells is, first of all, is a song of love, It's a song of bringing people together also, and the music video brings Church Bells across as this wedding song type of thing, but it doesn't matter what it is, but the main thing is that it's got love. It's got that love thing to it, and it just makes you like people feel good. It's also like a feel-good song.
South Africa is slowly returning to work, but fans will have to wait to get their hands on the full album.
It's all ready to roll. The music is finished. But I think now, given the current situation, we are having to revisit every single element of our business. So music releasing being obviously at the core of everything. And now we're just kind of strategizing. So it's set to release in May, but I don't want to say that yet, as it might change.
We're still keeping the dream alive, even though it's kind of like hard for us because we are a band. Sometimes to do the performances online, it's one of those 360-10 where one needs to carefully think about how to, to restart, to start again, using obviously the technology.
Like so many other artists around the world, Mikasa has taken a huge blow in the wake of this pandemic, but they're grateful to have loyal fans supporting them, and they can't wait to get back to performing. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, in Tanzania, an artist is helping to raise awareness about COVID-19 and how to prevent the spread of the virus. He performs daily on the streets, sharing messages about the coronavirus.
I'm a Tanzanian. You can call me Tanzania Joker. I'm artist of performing arts such as music, acting. Can continue because there is coronavirus, but I can use my art, my creativity to show the people. Then they can learn from me. Then you can practice it. I use body paint for creating different ideas who carry the message inside, such as idea of awareness with the precautions, washing hands, wearing masks in the public places, keep the distance with the people. I will do until this coronavirus disappears.
And coming up in your sports news. Tunisia's football